Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stuart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Retirement conversation. And on this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I have financial advisor Martin A. Smith, President of the Wealthcare Financial Group in the Bethesda, Maryland area today. Now, Martin, who specializes in the area of financial planning, will be talking to you today about planning for a secure retirement. So, if you are one of the growing numbers of people approaching retirement age, it might be a good idea just to down tools, give yourself a break, grab yourself a notepad and pen, and get ready to take some notes as we listen in to what Martin has to share with us today. So, with that said, let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Martin.
Thank you.
You are so welcome. So, let's just jump straight in, Martin. In your own words, briefly describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help.
Clients of Wealthcare Financial Group over the years have been comprised of people who are nearing retirement or who have already retired, but they need more attention paid to their wealth management, retirement planning, and investment advisory needs. Many of them are employees, some of them are corporate executives, and others of them are business owners that need succession planning or some advanced estate planning. Our company provides comprehensive wealth management, retirement planning, and investment advisory for individuals, and then for businesses, we offer retirement plan services and fiduciary consulting and investment management. So that would include like 401ks, writing the RFIs or RFPs for organizations that are looking for a 401k advisor, or even drafting and editing their investment policy statement. So we can sort of work on both sides of the fence in a sense. Either we can serve as the 401k advisor or the fiduciary consultant in helping the organization locate and hire a 401k advisor. So our businesses span both the needs of individuals as well as businesses and organizations.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing that with us, Martin. Before we move on to our next question, let's just take a moment to make it absolutely clear that anything you share with us today is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of disseminating information. Is that correct, Martin?
Absolutely correct.
So when those people who you just described come to you for your help, what's the most common misconception they have surrounding planning for a secure retirement?
The misconceptions are different depending on the individual. Some people, for example, may not have a lot of assets, a lot of retirement money saved, and therefore they may feel as though either it's too late for them to plan for retirement or not necessary to begin thinking about estate planning. In many cases, these individuals own houses. They may have a small checking or savings account. They own some other type of tangible asset, but they're not thinking about just the efficient and effective disposition of those assets and transfer those assets to intended beneficiaries. So that would come under the estate planning umbrella. For those who are probably late in retirement, in many cases, I've seen people that said, "Hey, I'm 50 years old, haven't saved an IRA, or 45 years old, never really started my 401k. How can I get a head start on saving? Just got some nice job making $100,000 plus, but I plan to retire in 10, 15 years, and that's not enough time to save to get me to where I want to be." So in those situations that are somewhat unique, there are products and services that are available to people that could help them accomplish that. So in those cases, there are other products and services that could assist people with achieving those goals. For example, there's equity index policies like universal life policies that have cash value built in that's pegged to the index. Unlike a 401k or an IRA, there's no cap on the contribution in many cases. So if a person needs to save more than $18,000 a year in a 401k or $5,000 a year or $6,000 a year in a Roth IRA, if they qualify for a Roth IRA, they can set aside up to $100,000 plus a year in a policy if they make that much money. So there are some ways to catch up, but I find that in many cases people need to just consider where they are, look at their expenses, look at their debt, and begin an aggressive plan that to reduce their liabilities, try to reduce expenses, including downsizing, and then think about where they can live where it's least expensive, hopefully debt-free in the future, and save as aggressively as possible. So even if you don't have large assets in your 401k, or if you don't have many, many years in credits accruing to your future income for a Social Security check, you can just do some effective expense management and debt management to reduce your liability and then create hopefully more free cash flow for the days when you're retired.
Based on what you just shared with us then, Martin, and obviously keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, please share an example or a case study, so to speak, of how you've helped or how you would even go about helping somebody who came to you with those challenges or those misconceptions you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to or would be able to gain for them.
Wow. So we've had many. One such example was a couple that, they were educating their kids, putting the kids through college, and all their money went towards expenses in college. And now that their eldest son has graduated high school and is off in college, they were thinking about putting themselves in a better position financially, and they're in their late 40s. So what we suggested was, let's look at your living expenses, let's look at how much you're paying for housing and property taxes. And we did a comprehensive financial plan. By the way, our company does free financial plans as a complimentary service. And that right there was initial savings of $2,500. So penny saved is a penny earned, right?
Awesome.
So what we've done is we were able to identify where else in the country they could live, where it's a lot less expensive. They can take the equity from their home and selling their house and buy another house that they can potentially pay off or have a much lower mortgage payment, where the property taxes are about a third of what they were here in the state of Maryland. And so as a result, that couple was willing and daring enough to take my advice and say, listen, you need to think about quality of life in retirement. That means let's sell this house, let's downsize, get a smaller home, maybe 3 bedrooms versus 5 or 6. Let's take the equity, let's add that to your future retirement savings. Let's reduce your debt and your expenses. And that plan assisted that family with creating some initial valuable wealth, if you will, that will now accrue for their retirement. So we've had some situations like that. And there are some times when I have to give that tough love and advice to clients and they don't want to take it because they have an emotional attachment to the house. But my response is always going to be, what do you have more emotional attachment to? Your home or your quality of life? I think if you could live with less expenses, with a lot less debt, then you're going to have a happier, better quality of life where you can travel and do things that you really want to do.
As a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is financial advisor Martin A. Smith, president of the Wealthcare Financial Group in Bethesda, Maryland. And today's topic is planning for a secure retirement. Now, with that in mind, Martin, and for those people who find themselves thinking about their options for retirement, please share one common but unknown pitfall they need to be aware of, regardless of what situation they find themselves in.
I think a common pitfall is perhaps just getting into the habit of spending a lot and creating this impression in your mind that you have a lifestyle to keep up with. And if you live in an area where it's more affluent and if you're having a decent-sized salary or income, the pitfall is assuming that you're going to have that money that you're getting from that job for so many years. And so the shock of now you've got to finance the rest of your life after you retire and life gets more expensive incrementally, how do you achieve filling in that gap? And so a pitfall is just not recognizing the slow boiling process that one does to him or herself when they just get into a routine of spending and spending and spending, and then all of a sudden you have to curtail that spending because there's a less income. And so I think a lot of these pitfalls are self-induced, and they can be self-corrected. There are other pitfalls that are just not necessarily self-induced, and they're just sort of the challenge of life. For example, maybe saving in a 401k and thinking that you're going to be able to maintain a certain allocation of your portfolio, let's say moderate aggressive or moderate conservative, and have the wrong, unfortunately, the wrong allocation. In many cases, people will save in a 401k and they'll tend to be more aggressive than perhaps they should be. And so when they retire, the market or economy could take a turn. And so now that if they have a $700,000 retirement in their 401k, and you retired, for example, in December 2007, guess what happened by February 2008? The Great Recession hit. And so now your portfolio is down 40%. Mm-hmm. But understand that many people, before they retire, they do their retirement planning and they project out what they want life to look like in the future. And if the recession hit afterwards, guess what happens to that picture? That picture is now sort of scary because all of a sudden you don't have the assets to achieve those goals. And so you've got to make some big adjustments. So I tend to tell people that when you are about 3 to 5 years out of retirement, really start to monitor how the economy is going to impact your portfolio. And when you do retire, think about the way you can create guaranteed income and still get market-like returns without the market risk in the portfolio. That would include the use of some insurance-based products. But also, if you need more returns, you've got to look at the market, mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, stocks, bonds, corporate bonds, etc. So effective portfolio management doesn't take its eye off the ball of the economic cycle and how that tends to impact asset allocation and ultimately the returns in your portfolio. And you've got to be willing to look across the spectrum of the resources and products offered by financial advisors, from insurance, annuities, to equities, individual mutual funds, exchange-traded funds, and alternative investments in order to build the allocation that is suitable for you during your retirement years.
Okay, so Martin, let me ask you this. When you think about successful retirement planning, it could mean different things for different people, right?
Correct.
So when you're able to actually help your clients to achieve their retirement goals, on a deep down personal level, what does it give you and how does it make you feel?
Part of my purpose, and I always say an extension of my ministry, is to help people and educate people. And for me, that self-actualizing, I think, is also God-glorifying as a Christian, as one who recognizes that the work I do is a gift, that I have a passion for it, and therefore it's my gift to others to help them as best I can and to offer advice that is objective and always in their best interest. So for me to help someone overcome a challenge or achieve the outcome they want in retirement, it makes me feel great, and that's something that you can't pay me enough money for. For example, I was referred to a woman who she's 76 years old. She's a widow, and her husband died, unfortunately, from cancer a few years back. He left a portfolio in his 401k. However, she's been fighting with a large investment firm for the last year to get the money transferred to her. Her next of kin is in St. Petersburg. And I said, "Oh, Florida?" She said, "No, Russia."
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, "Oh my goodness, how in the world are we going to do this estate planning?" And she has a speech impediment, one, the accent, two, just age and hearing. So it was a challenge just being able to communicate, let alone figure out how to get her money back to her. So we were scheduled to meet actually today. And I spoke with her yesterday. I said, "Listen, let's just get this other investment company on the phone. Let's do a three-way. Let's hammer this thing out." So we were able to, as her interpreter, get her late husband's 401k transferred to a 401k that they have to set up in her name, so that I can then transfer the funds to an IRA in her name, and she will have direct access and management over that IRA, of course, with my assistance. And so this is a 76-year-old woman who has literally a large parrot and a very big, aggressive Afghan dog, some loving neighbors. She's been in the neighborhood for 30-something years.
Right.
But I can't go to her house to serve her because the dog will bite me. The dog is huge. But at the same time, she needs someone who's willing and patient to just listen to her and can just help her figure out what her needs are. And she called me 3 weeks after I was referred to her, and I didn't know who she was, and I could barely understand what she was saying, and it was on a Saturday afternoon. So I listened and said, "Oh, you're that person that I've been expecting to hear from." So that's a situation where I feel like I'm doing a service, not only to her, but to her late husband, because she has literally no one here to take care of her. And, she called the person who referred me yesterday and said, "Hey, I want you to get Martin's address, and I want to send him a check." And I said to her, "Look, you can't pay me for this. I'm not charging you for this. This is, I think, what people should do for one another. Everything doesn't have to come with a price tag, but
Exactly.
I think you just have to serve people based on their needs.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that story. That's going to be really useful for our listeners tuning in today and in the future as this interview is found online. It isn't always about the numbers. Even though you're called a financial advisor, there is a human being and there are relationships behind all of those conversations. So thank you so much for sharing that, Martin.
You're welcome.
So let me ask you this then, Martin. We just spoke a little bit about, what's important to you. How does your job make you feel when you're able to create that transformation for your clients? So let's just spend a brief moment talking a little bit about your background and especially your formal education and your experience as it relates to financial planning.
Right. So I grew up in Northern California. I did not grow up understanding the stock market, didn't know what the stock market was. When I used to see the ticker tape on television, I never knew what it was. I had no formal education or training in finance. I went to Howard University in Washington, D.C., and studied legal communications. So I was really interested in interpersonal communications, and I understood that the key to any relationship is effective communications. And I figured if I could learn how to be an effective communicator, then I could apply that to any service or profession that I later find myself in. And so just being able to communicate, sell myself, make people feel comfortable in the conversation, understand them and understand how people think, what makes people tick was just sort of my focus. So I later went and learned how to, I learned about life insurance and mutual funds. I was working in D.C., Washington, D.C., and back in the late 90s, there was a lot of what I call a lot of predatory life insurance that was sold to a lot of the poor residents of Washington, D.C. For example, a single mother with 3 children paying $250 a month for $10,000 face amount of life insurance and living in the projects. So I would go there and say, oh, my goodness, let's figure out where you are. In many cases, they didn't have a checking or savings account, and I would take the $250 and take $100 of that $250, buy them $100,000 to $150,000 of 30-year term insurance, and take the $150 and save that money in an IRA for them. And so in many cases, I was the first introduction to anything called investing for many of these poor residents. I did that for 5 years. And then later I went to A.G. Edwards and Sons and was a financial consultant and assistant branch manager 2 years later. I went to Merrill Lynch for a brief stint, and I later launched my own firm, Wealthcare Financial Group, with a focus on educating people, helping people, serving, and just broadening the scope of wealth management, retirement planning, fiduciary and investment management, and investment advisory services for business owners and individuals. After about maybe 10 years or 15 years, I forget, from 2003, I guess, until 2000, almost 10 years, a little bit more, 2011, I enrolled in a commercial real estate finance master's program at Georgetown University, where I completed my master's in commercial real estate finance. And the reason is because I've always been interested in real estate. However, I meet a lot of investors who are either developers or real estate investors. And in many cases, in my profession as a financial advisor, many advisors don't give advice with respect to the distribution and acquisition of commercial real estate assets. And so that's just a huge market that a lot of advisors are not qualified to engage with. And so now, after completing this degree and having just some background in real estate, I'm able to speak that language to developers, whether it's a mom and pop sort of retail storefront or a Class A high-rise building, from development, acquisition, the whole 9 yards, leasing, everything. And it's just a wealth of service that I really enjoy having and I've learned a lot about. So that's been sort of my professional educational background, I guess. And the way I learned this industry of finance was not formally through college. It was literally picking up a newspaper, Investors Business Daily. And I always tell people this because a lot of folks ask, how did you learn this stuff? Investors Business Daily. The website is investors.com. They have a book written by the founder of the paper called How to Make Money in Stocks. Founder is William O'Neill. Investors Business Daily, it rivals the Wall Street Journal. And the paper is written for laymen. So it's not like the Wall Street, where I think you probably just need a little more easier paper to read, but it's still packed with all the information in the journal. That's what I learned. I literally read it for an entire year, read the book, and just became self-educated. And so my passion obviously, is to educate people, because that's been my background and my experience. And I've been blessed to provide education to the National Basketball Association's Development League, to the entire California National Guard, to numerous corporations throughout the D.C., Maryland region.
Just listening to you, Martin, it just feels like you have found your true north. This is a real, true passion of yours. It's much more than money. I feel that coming through the airwaves as we speak with each other. So thank you so much for sharing that story.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, so for those people who are listening right now, we are coming towards the end of the show. What are your final thoughts before we finish up with our last question for today?
My final thoughts for people that are thinking about their retirement planning needs or financial planning needs is, don't do it alone. Don't do it in a vacuum. Do the work of getting a financial plan, especially since we offer it complimentary. And if you got to use someone else, then fine, pay for it and get it done. Because I say financial planning is like painting a portrait of what you want life to look like in the future, and then filling in the details of how you're going to achieve that in a roadmap. And one big detail that you cannot overlook is the economy and how it impacts the stock market. In the stock market, I usually say how the economy impacts asset classes, meaning small cap value growth, mid cap value growth, real estate, bonds, international, large cap value growth, commodities. The economic cycle impacts those asset classes, and your portfolio is comprised of those asset classes. So whether we are in a recession, recovery, expansion, trough, or peak in the economic cycle, one of those asset classes or more is going to have a good year and or a bad year. And if you understand how to properly diversify your portfolio according to asset class diversification, with the assistance of someone who understands economic cycles, you're going to have a better outcome in your portfolio, and thus a more secure, hopefully, retirement. And that's a huge part of retirement planning, is getting that part right and monitoring it, and of course staying out of debt and staying out of trouble. So I think that's really something I want to impress upon people, is don't just go out there and buy investment products or services in a vacuum. Make sure those products and services fit within the picture of what you want life to look like, and understand specifically what they do, what they're supposed to do, how long you should hold them, understand the cost of them, do your research, get some outside opinions, and be willing to revise it and review it every 3 to 5 years.
And that's some sage advice if I've ever heard any. And I must add to that, again, not legal advice or legal assistance. So, Martin, finally, if there is someone who wants to know, they feel that they need to know more about planning for a secure retirement, what's the best way for them to reach you?
They can reach me by phone, website, or email. My phone number is 240-482-3752. Email is msmith, that's from Martin Smith, it's msmith@W, C as in Charlie, F as in Frank, I as in India, N as in Nancy, and the word group, msmith@wcfingroup.com, which is also the URL for our website, wcfingroup.com. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter. If you go to our website, you can go to the bottom left and you'll see our social media links. But that's the best way to reach me. Call me, email me. I'm happy to offer advice and just listen to your situation and try to be of assistance as best as possible.
Okay, Martin, you've shared tip after tip after tip, and I have a feeling that we're only began to scrape the tip of the iceberg today with the amount of insights that you could have shared. However, we are out of time. So, as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, we have been listening to financial advisor Martin Smith. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Martin. You have definitely demonstrated that you are a true educator and advocate for your client success. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a great honor.
You are welcome, Martin, my friend. And I'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to you. Yes, the listener. Without you, we wouldn't have anybody to talk to. So thank you so much for joining us on what I can only describe as a very insightful conversation with one of the leading financial advisors in the Bethesda, Maryland area today. Again, his name is Martin Smith. make sure you do check him out. Give him a call, visit his website. He has some great resources on there. Whatever you do decide to do after listening to Martin today, I am most sure that you are going to be in good hands. So that's it, folks. Again, my name is Stuart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading financial planning professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Retirement Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.